there's a reason, number one, that all the recreational use when in the United States, in all different states, it very specifically says adult use. It doesn't say use. There's a very specific terminology there, adult use.
Right.
And the reason for that is that, let me make an analogy in some ways. As a clinician who uses psychotropic medicines, there are numerous times where a pregnant woman comes to me who needs treatment for that reason. And you have to discuss the risk and the benefits. And most of the times, the risks that we discuss are in the first trimester of the pregnancy, when the things are developing. After the first trimester, more or less, the organs are formed. And after that, they're only going to get bigger. So any risk of any malformations is after the third month is very rare. It's in the first 3 months of that time frame that you are trying to hold back the medicines if you can. And you say, you know what, this is not the time to do that. Now carry that over from birth to age 25. That's how long it takes for the brain to fully develop, for that pruning to take place, all the synaptic connections to
the structure being built.
Absolutely, structure being built at that time. So THC in particular can go and impact and disrupt that pruning process, and particularly impact the prefrontal cortex. Prefrontal cortex is like what I call as the hard drive of our brains in some ways. Executive functioning, impulse control, decision-making, mood regulation, all of the things that are important for social cognition, how you navigate in the world, your learning, all of these things, they are happening in that. So if you try to disrupt that, more or less, cognition also, one of the most important things, can be impacted. And unfortunately, it's not uncommon that if you are using it heavily, you are going to have the problem. And I don't want people to think that, you're going to take one puff of THC and you're going to lose 10 IQ points. No, that's not the point. We are really talking about a consistent, regular use of, cannabis with high THC. And those are some of the biological aspects, but from the cognitive aspect of how the brain functioning is. What is more important?
So there is literally a loss of IQ. That's documented. That's not just conjecture.
Yes, there is, if you look at the data, to be honest, you will see on both ends. There is data that suggests, yes, there is IQ points that are, even if you stop, you don't lose, but you don't regain, which is detrimental, in fact, in some ways to think about it. But then they bring other facets and aspects into what other things may be playing a role when they start factoring in genetics and age and gender and culture and education and all of the social. It becomes a little bit more muddy in terms of how much IQ you are really losing. That's the issue. And I think we won't know because a lot of this is being done by THC versus taking these plants and really using those to really study these. That's the difference. Sometimes, as I said to you, the entourage effect and all of these other things. Second, more importantly, is adolescence prior to age of 25. 25 is sort of the cutoff mark that we think of, until which point, in my opinion, honestly, stay away from it. Don't use it. That's how I would say it very, very clearly. Family histories of predisposition to some psychotic disorders, schizophrenia, schizoaffective, as well as bipolar conditions in this way. We have seen that use of THC, particularly high potency THC, can trigger not only an acute psychotic episode, but in fact go down the path of having a chronic psychotic disorder. In fact, there is some data to suggest that people who have done it, 25%, which is a huge percentage of people, will end up developing a chronic psychotic condition with this. My suggestion, and this is, I see it, I've seen it so many times, parents don't want to hear you on this. I have people who have come in as a college student. He's in college, he's in the second, third year, or approaching the final year, which is the prime years. They're doing well. And now they're in school and they start smoking at that time heavily. And then suddenly their grades are falling. They're isolated. They are sort of having bizarre conversations or bizarre attitude. The concern is something has gone wrong or whatever. They bring to your attention. And you have this conversation with them that, okay, based on this symptomatology at this point, I'm going to start them on an antipsychotic medicine. And then the question becomes, well, are you going to give this forever? And the question really is, and I've seen it over years, which is, well, to be honest, at this stage, the way what I've seen, yes, because this person, if you stop them, will probably again have these symptoms again.
It'll come back,
come back. You may be able to have a good life, be able to pass college, have a degree, have a relationship, but in terms of your peers, you may never be able to have the same level of functioning as the peer. It's a heartbreaking thing.
And you never want to end up in that conversation.
No, you don't.
As a parent or as a doctor.
Sometimes parents leave and say, you are wrong. And then you hear back from them 6 months later. Oh, I'm sorry to say, but he has a psychotic episode. Again, he wasn't taking, has gotten worse. What you're bringing up is, I think, such an important point. And I can't emphasize enough that all of this legalization that we discuss about and some of the complications, and clinicians need to know this, that at the heart of it, if you need to do all of it, is education. We have done a great job with smoking, for example. We have done a great job with opioids, and more recently, we've done all of this.
And even alcohol. We're prepared to tell teenagers about the consequences of drinking, driving, impairment, addiction.
Why can't we do the same with education about this and take it on a broad scale that we can do this?
Right. We need to do it. We absolutely need to. It's much easier to do it upstream than downstream.
Correct.
And, I'll just point out, because I'm a social worker, but also because I work in creative modalities and study the brain's plasticity, something as you would be very well familiar with, that we're finding out more and more that even in things like psychosis, of course, very case specific and hard to say this generally, but there can be ways to challenge the mind to adapt and grow, even when there is quote unquote organic brain damage or loss of function. There can be ways, very intensive therapies, of course.
Correct.
But the brain can learn. It's much, much easier to just not do it. We're not saying just say no, it's not that easy, but I think it's about saying yes to understanding the whole picture.